the final hand-built M car featuring one of the largest inline sixes BMW has ever produced, derived directly from the M1 race car engine, possibly one of the most understated, undervalued, and underappreciated BMWs of all time. We are of course talking about the E34 M5. This Euro spec 3.8 Daytona Violet E34 M5 has been amongst the top of my BMW dream list for quite some time. This is the car that a teenage Josh looked at, whether it was in Forza video games, whether it was watching Georgie's infamous drifting videos in Europe from the earlier 2000s, or it was just seeing BMW articles or ads or whatever. This was the one I had to have. Daytona Violet, Euro spec 3.8, E34 M5. I have finally found the right spec car. It took many, many years to find this. A lot of people were always wondering, where's the M5? The M5 couldn't come until it was in this spec. And now that we have it, and I spent a month driving it and enjoying it, we are tasked with the question of, were my dreams all these years worth it? Or is this a case of never meet your heroes? And we're gonna find that out in this video. To start this video, I'm going to very biasedly tell you guys that I think the E34 M5 is the best looking M5 of all time. I know there's tons of debates and arguments out there. I don't care. I think that you cannot deny the absolute beauty of an E34 M5 in this paint especially. The Daytona Violet is just beautiful. The bumpers, the body. We all know I'm an E34 guy, but I just had to start it off with saying, undoubtedly, one of the most attractive cars of all time. So if you're new to my channel and you aren't familiar with this car, you're gonna immediately wonder, why is this American sitting on the right side of the car? Well, this is a right-hand drive M5. This car was imported from New Zealand, which was imported from Great Britain. So this is the wrong side of the car. This video isn't necessarily going to focus on the fact of which side of the road I'm driving from, because I think it's unimportant. We will touch on it because there has been actually an odd enough amount of like hatred about it, and I want to just clear the air on that side. But let's just get that past us. So what has it been like driving my E34 M5 for the past month? Does it live up to the expectations? Does it exceed the expectations? Am I wildly disappointed? That's valid questions, because as I learned earlier in the year, I acquired an E31, and that was another one of my high up on the list want to own BMWs. You guys may have seen the videos. I did an engine build on it. I made a more powerful stroker V8, and I have to say I was wildly disappointed. And that's where the phrase never meet your heroes comes from. If you've never heard it, that basically means the things you look up to, the people you look up to, your heroes, they say you should never meet them because you will be disappointed. And I have to say I was wildly disappointed with my E31. That's why I no longer have the car. But will the E34 M5 fall victim to the same mentality, or is this the greatest car of all time? We'll find that out. Let's talk about the specs behind this car. The E34 M5 is a 340, because this is a 3.8 Euro car, 340 horsepower, 295 foot-pounds of torque. These things weigh in at about 3,600 pounds, which is actually pretty decently heavier than a 525i. You have the throwing star staggered wheels, because this is a Nürburgring car. You have the lowered suspension. This car is EDC, but it's all been deleted, so I can't necessarily touch on the EDC aspect of things. The S38 B38 engine is a dual overhead cam, 24 valve, inline six, no Vanos, none of that garbage. This car is, I think, one of the first BMW engines to actually feature direct coil on plug rather than a distributor and a cap and a rotor. The 3.6 S38 does have that. This engine was updated to this. It's, I think, a Motronic 3.3. They made these from 92 to 95. These are considered the late model M5s in Europe. In America, as we know, the E34 M5 was killed off in 1993, replaced by the 540. There's a lot of people that will try to compare a 540 to a 3.6 M5, and they say, oh, the M5's not worth it, the V8's fine. Well, This is the more powerful 340 horsepower 3.8. The American version is about 311 horsepower. So a decent bump. Basically, there's a bigger bore, a little bit longer stroke, and bigger exhaust and intake valves, along with, I think, larger ITB ports. These, I believe, are, I don't want to get this wrong, these are 50 millimeters instead of 42. That number is not right in my head. I think I'll put it in. But yeah, basically, these things are a powerhouse. You get the, well, in my car, M Hurricane anthracite interior, so these are cloth seats, sport seats, of course. Otherwise, because it's an M car, you obviously got bigger brakes, you get special bumpers. These cars, if you notice, the Daytona Violet has these silver lowers, granite silver. The Euro spec later M5s were all optioned with either a black bottom or a silver bottom. So the first, probably most noticeable part of this car that actually threw me off because I didn't know about it is the M5 servotronic steering. And what that is basically adaptive power steering that when you're stationary or going very slow, it is super helpful. Like, there's a lot of assist. And then when you're speeding up, going faster, it gets harder and there's less assist, because obviously at higher speeds, you don't want your steering to be like a feather. You don't want to get thrown off the road. And the first thing I noticed was, man, this car steers really, really light. And I thought maybe it was like super worn out, like the steering box, and I was like, oh, that's not nice. And then I realized that it's the servotronic. And at first I wasn't too stoked on it, but I have to say, I grew to absolutely love it. I think that this is the lightest steering E34 I've ever driven, especially, you know, at low speeds. Any 525 or 535 I've ever been in does not steer like this. This car is just insanely easy to turn at low speeds, which is actually really nice, because I actually do really enjoy the heavy steering feel of E34s. But, you know, at low speeds, there's nothing wrong with some assist and making it easier on you. So I've grown to really like it. And then, of course, when you're speeding up, going faster, it helps you out, and it gets, or it helps you less. And you still retain that good feeling of, you know, an old style steering box, which I'm actually the biggest fan of. A lot of people complain about the plain steering boxes. I find them to be very enjoyable to drive. And the M5 steering box is actually pretty responsive. I gotta say, this is a lot more responsive than any 525 I've ever driven. So right off the bat, we have a plus for the M5. I do very much like the servotronic. If it's giving me issues, that's another story for another day if that happens. But for now, she's been good, so we're gonna keep it as being good. The car overall handles really good. The thicker sway bars, which will come into play later once we hit the fun roads, are absolutely all the way noticeable. You have that 19 millimeter rear sway bar, which just absolutely keeps the body roll well under control. It makes for a very like intuitive, but like just all around nice and comfortable like handling. Like it doesn't feel like you're gonna lose it. It doesn't feel hard to control. And when you get on the gas, you have that S38 singing and that 340 horsepower, and it is sublime is the best way I can put it. My biggest fear for an M5, am I going to be disappointed by the power? That is the one thing that always held me back from an M5, because I thought, you know what? I have a 500 horsepower, or actually 600 horsepower turbo 525. No M5 is going to come close unless it's turboed. So do I really want to spend the money on the collector grade car when, you know, my 525 will outperform it? That was the biggest fear. And I didn't know if I would be very underwhelmed or if I would be happy, but I just have to say, and I'll just show you guys, we'll go in a second. I have to say, I am very happy with the power level of this M5. I have yet to drive a US spec M5. We will soon. But the Euro 340 horsepower, 10 to 5 compression, or 10 to 1 or 10 to 5, I can't remember. It feels great. This car really follows suit to a lot of the M cars where you gotta wring it out to kind of feel everything that you want to feel, right? Higher horsepower than torque, that's not unusual. 295 torque is actually pretty good. This is slightly before BMW got to the formula of high revving, low torque, high horsepower. Because you know, an E46 M3 makes 264 foot-pounds of torque and 333 horsepower. So less power and less torque than this, which makes this car technically head-to-head should be the faster car. We'll find that out eventually. I'll put the two head-to-head. But yeah, so these cars I think have a 7,200 RPM redline. Max power is at 6,900. Max torque is at 4,500. So, you know, where you're feeling the car is higher in the revs. When you're down low, you're not experiencing an M car. And that's with any M car. M3s, M5s, they want to be wrung out. And you have to do that with this car. But I don't think you have to do it quite as much as you have to with like an E30 M3 or an E46 M3. Because like I said, you still have a pretty decent torque number on this. It's not a 250 torque. 295 is a decent number. And you really feel it. Like, this car puts you back. And I think that the power for the car is perfect. Literally perfect. Many times will I talk about, oh, I think an M50 E30 is the right power. I think an S52 E34 is the right power. Well, this thing is the right power for the car. It feels just fantastic. I mean, it is so much fun to drive. And, you know, even down low, like, you do have power, right? Like, right around 3,000 is where it really starts to kind of pick up. And then obviously 4,500, and then you're starting to zoom, right? And you're already speeding. But, and then, you know, the brakes are good. The brakes stop you almost too good sometimes. I found myself almost flooring it and hitting the steering wheel. Being a 93, this car is not the upgraded huge front brakes, nor is this a 6-speed car. I forgot to mention this is a 5-speed G280, just like the earlier M5s, just like the US M5s, which is a transmission that's typically seen as being made of glass. Mine has no issues, knock on wood. So I think it shifts really nice. I think it's a really good shifting transmission. Being left-hand drive, of course, it's a little bit weird sometimes, but overall, the drivetrain of this car, fantastic. I can't remember the diff ratio. I want to say it's probably a 315 in this car, but don't quote me on that. It's just all around, the most worry I had was, is the power going to be bad, or is it going to be underwhelming? It's not underwhelming. Is this car a rocket ship? No. Does this car fall into the category of why we love these old M cars so much? Yes, because it wants to be wrung out. And when you're wringing it out, you're not feeling as if though you're going to kill yourself. You're not yawning, and you have an entire chassis that, I mean, dude, the steering in this car is so direct. I don't know what the ratio changes between a M5 steering box and non-M5, but no non-M that I've ever driven has felt quite as impressive as this car in terms of steering feel. And this is a 180,000 mile car. When you hook the next gear and you keep it in the 4,000 or above range, you will be impressed that this car continues to put you back even into 4th and 5th gear. One of the most impressive things on the car is the fact that it always feels like you still have power. I'll get into that in 1 second. Let me hit these curvy roads for you guys, for myself. The staggered M systems keep you feeling very planted, along with that sway bar that I mentioned. I mean, just it makes you smile, dude. the way this car handles, the way this car feels is so good. It is like I have the utmost confidence when I'm cornering this car, straight line speed. It is always feels in control and exactly kind of how I want it to feel, which is a really weird thing to talk about. But the one thing I've really liked about M cars all these years is that they feel like when you're pushing them, they're where you want it to be. Whereas like my mid-engine Ferrari, it scares me. But this thing, I have confidence in the corners. I have confidence at speed. The steering hydro boost kicks in and it gets stiffer. And next thing you know, you are just off and having a ball. But what I mentioned before I got into the corners there, I got really carried away because how much fun this is. The one thing that really impresses me on this car is the feeling of being in even 4th and 5th gear and you mat it and it moves. Like, I don't know why this feels so much more prominent in that department than most other cars I've driven. Like the E46 isn't there for me, probably because of the low torque. Obviously non-Ms just don't have the power. But this car, one of the things, I took it on a 4-hour road trip, or 5-hour round trip road trip, and I noticed that on the highway I'd be cruising and I could kind of floor it to change lanes, and I did not need to downshift. It felt like it had all the power I needed, and that was really like a big deal for me because it just gives you this feeling, this sense of like, oh, like this is a quick, powerful car. I have this car and I think I could probably do 180 miles an hour in it. The electronic limited speed is 155. I've been told that in Europe or the untuned cars or whatever you have to do to unlock it, if that's even true, maybe they're not even locked. I've been told that these could do, I think, 170, which is impressive. Have I yet to get there? No. Will I ever get there? Maybe not. But nonetheless, they can do it. I gotta get gas really quick. And this is where the M5 comes in. You have the utmost comfort. And that is where, again, this car really amazed me. The fact that this is an M car, this is a high performance, high strung, racing derived engine. Anyway, with that, right, you have the power, you have that, you have all the handling stuff of an M car. You also have a car that is so comfortable and handles so well in a luxury and touring aspect that it absolutely amazes you. I like taking this thing on my road trip, right? I would have to find myself monitoring the speedo over and over and over again because I would just get carried away and I would be going well over the speed limit. Like, I kid you not, this car is so quiet inside, so comfortable. I'd be looking, I wouldn't be paying attention for a second. I'd look down and I'd be going 100 miles an hour, right? And you go, I mean, even my passenger, I can't even tell that we're going that fast. You do not feel the speed of this car. It is so insane how comfortable the car is. I mean, we all know E34s are comfortable, right? But I figured maybe coming into the M world, you would lose a little bit of that comfort. Like, I honestly feel like this car is more comfortable than the non-Ms. I don't know what it is. You know, it's obviously well maintained, but I mean, it handles high speeds in a comfortable setting so well. Literally 2.5 hours to Road America. Listening to music, chatting, just enjoying myself. The seats, the sports seats are so insanely comfortable. I'd say they're right up there in comfort with the comfort seats. Literally no complaints whatsoever on these seats. Adjustable lumbar, or not lumbar, but knee bolstering. I mean, it literally, though, even the wind noise and that sort of stuff that typically these cars lack because of their age, the road noise isn't bad. There's not any creaks, and I've always said this about E34s. They're so well built. You don't get creaks and rattles, and and stuff. Even at 180,000 miles, 181 now, you don't get those nasty kind of cheap feeling rattles. And what you get is an insanely comfortable touring experience that, just like this, you can floor it and you are out of wherever your speed limit is. You're out of the speed limit, just for lack of better words. The power is instant. You can literally go from I am cruising completely comfortably to one downshift, and sometimes not even a downshift, and you're out of there, right? If the revs on the highway are in the 3 to 4, the power is instant. You are going to be gone. And that's, like I said, that's what an M5 is. M5 is a super saloon. So that means you have a 4-door family car. You could be a businessman, but then you can hit the Autobahn and you can absolutely put to shame a lot of cars that you think should be faster and you think should be more comfortable. And it does both of them. And that is where the specialness of 1990s M comes into play, especially M5s. I mean, even E39 M5s, as they're regarded as the best, the comfort mixed with the sheer fun is like next to none in car. I cannot think of many cars that can give you that experience. I was trying to think of, for this video, my pros and cons. Pros are too many to list, but the cons is what was interesting, right? Okay, what can I say for the cons of this M5? And at first I had one thing that I was like, kind of don't like it. And that was the fact that the exhaust note is really underwhelming and quiet. It doesn't sound like you'd think like, oh, maybe, it's an M5, it's got power, it's got this, whatever, racing heritage. Maybe it's just like, maybe it's loud, maybe it's whatever. And it's really not. It's dead quiet. You guys heard the exhaust note from the beginning of the video. It's pretty underwhelming. It sounds pretty like vintagey BMW. But then I thought about it and I thought, you know what? It should be like that. Because after all, this is an M5. This is a super saloon. This is not a Ferrari. This is not a race car. You don't want to have a loud exhaust. You don't want to have a droning exhaust on the highway. I did a 5-hour round trip and I couldn't hear any exhaust. And that's what you want. You want power, and you want quiet, and you want comfort. And this car does it perfectly. So I guess if you want to buy this raw, out of the box, like loud, obnoxious, whatever, this doesn't really do that. This keeps it pretty tame. But even, E46 M3, E36 M3, they all don't really have exotic exhaust notes. I would say the E39 M5 starts to get there with the V8. It gets a little loud. The V10, obviously, the later M5s. But, even like an E92 M3, it's a pretty refined, quiet note, which is what you want. You want it to be refined. You don't want it to be, in my mind, the S54 is a little bit raspy. I don't know if I would call it refined, but it's quiet. But it's being like, the age of this engine shows, because it is like a raggedy, not raggedy, but when you're idling, it sounds cammed. Like it's a lopey kind of a old style exhaust note, which I actually love. And when you're accelerating, you get some induction noise, but I don't think it's not very loud. And you get some exhaust noise. Like, I don't know if you guys can hear when I'm doing these pulls, maybe. I think more so, honestly, induction noise is what you begin to hear at higher revs, but then to also mix in the styling, like if there was ever something to make you feel like you're driving a special car, throw a suede and cloth Hurricane with the M stripe colors in the interior, the seats, the door cards. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you get a beautiful purple color outside, two-tone with beautiful bumpers, and then you just get this interior, and it's like artwork. And I don't know why the US never got stuff like this. You have to get a Eurospec car to get an interior this rad, but it's just gorgeous. And right now I got the AC pumping full blast. Now let's talk about really quick a sentiment on the right-hand drive. One of the funniest things to me was the fact that people in my Instagram video and my TikTok were actually like bad-mouthing the car. They're like, oh, that's a shame, it's worthless because it's right-hand drive, or oh, that's useless, right-hand drive in America, pointless, right-hand drive sucks. And I was so blown away by these opinions on right-hand drive because, first off, being an American in the car industry, growing up, there was nothing cooler to me than seeing a right-hand drive like JDM car. I always wanted to drive right-hand drive. I always wanted to experience it. And I just thought when you would see a right-hand drive car, I always thought it was the coolest thing. Now, did I buy this M5 because it was right-hand drive? No. I bought it because of the spec and it happened to be right-hand drive. But did the fact that it was right-hand drive have this effect on my brain of like, okay, that's even cooler? Because, you know, I'm a nerd, right? And I don't do this to gloat and be like, oh, I got a rare, whatever. But in the sense of like, for the coolness in my own head of like, oh, I have a really unique car, right? Yes, the Daytona on Hurricane 3.8 car is very rare in of itself, but you add the right-hand drive factor and it's like, you're probably not gonna see another one of these at a United States Cars and Coffee. And to me, that makes it even cooler. But you know, anyway, it was just really weird, all these people that were like kind of talking trash, because me personally, I bought the car because I like the right-hand drive. Being right-hand drive doesn't mean less power, doesn't mean less of an M5. It means nothing other than which side of the car you're driving from. So people were trying to degrade it as if though it's less than an M5 because it's right-hand drive, which is just silly. We are adaptive learning creatures. Just because we grow up in America on the left side does not mean you're incapable of driving on this side of the car. Like, nothing changes. So those comments were more so fun to me than anything. The only response in my head, which I don't even engage with that stuff, but well, good thing you're not driving my M5. I am. And speaking on the right-hand drive, the $1 million question was, is it weird? Is it hard to drive? Is it awkward? So first day got dropped off. I drove the car from the truck to the house. I was like, what the hell? Like, I thought, I don't think I could drive this car. But I have to say, almost immediately, I have gotten pretty comfortable with the car. I will say, being on this side of the car, driving ability-wise, doesn't bother me. Left-hand shifting was a little more interesting to get used to, just because I'm not really a lefty, and nor am I ambidextrous. My left hand is kind of worthless, like in that way. So I have to take a lot of precautions and thoughts about which gear I'm going into, because I don't have the muscle memory of my right hand, just because I've been driving stick with this hand for many years. But as I said, we are adaptive creatures. So the more I drive it, the more comfortable I'm getting. So like right now, that was a rev match downshift to third. I didn't even have to think about it, right? I'm getting a lot better at that, almost to the point where it doesn't even like bother me in the slightest. So there we have our first month review of the E34 M5. I started this video off with a cliffhanger. Is it going to live up to its expectations or not? And I just want to mess with you guys. This car, without a doubt, has not only lived up to my utmost expectations of what an E34 M5 should be, but it has exceeded my expectations. I absolutely love this car. I adore this car. I cannot stop driving it. It is everything I wanted an M5 to be. And I honestly can't even tell you any complaints. It is so perfect in everything that it does. No, it's not 600 horsepower like a F90 M5. We're not driving or buying these classic BMWs because we're looking for that. If you want that, go buy an F90. Go turbo your 525, do whatever. If you want to just dive into retro 90s, just super saloon legendary car status, that's where an M5 comes in. And I also mentioned at the beginning of this video that these are the most undervalued, understated cars. This is a topic for another video, but I'm just gonna briefly say it. This might ruffle some feathers. It should be criminal that this car is as cheap as it is compared to an E30 M3. And I'm gonna leave it there. I know this car doesn't have the DTM history that an E30 M3 has, but if you're putting them side by side, that'll be the next video. But what this car can do, I can't even believe these are as cheap as they are. This is one of the coolest like BMWs of all time in my mind. So that's fine. Keep them affordable. Let us be able to buy them. I hope everyone that wants one can get one. But just definitely criminally underrated, because there is nothing wrong with this car. There is nothing that I don't love about this car. So this is not a case of never meet your heroes. This is a case of absolutely meet your heroes if possible, because you will love this car, because I absolutely love this car. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed our 1 month review of my dream car. It is like heaven owning this car. I can't even explain the feeling. I've had a lot of special BMWs, but finally getting my E34 M5 is a feeling like no other. So thank you guys again for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.